Whose side are you on? I'm Jessica Denson, and this is Lights On. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to the Jessica Denson YouTube channel where you are watching this now. I am Jessica Denson. For those of you who don't know me, who may be seeing me for the first time, I'm a former Trump aide turned activist after years and years of committing myself to silence not being an option and combating and defeating Donald Trump's illegality in the courts. In the courts. My fight, my unwillingness to be a citizen who watches democracy die on our watch after so many generations of incredible sacrifices for freedom and progress in this country has led me to activism. And in the past several months, I have been leading protests. Back in March, we had what I believe was the largest protest to date on the National Mall. It was a veterans protest in honor of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which prohibits currently Donald Trump and his entire administration from being in power. And a big question that I have, or maybe I know the answer to it, but is what role our military plays, our armed forces, in saving our democracy in this moment, in refusing to disobey the oath that they have taken to defend our Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic, and to only follow legal orders of the president. If you are familiar with Lights On, you know that we have been relentless on this show on covering the tools that Congress has and must employ to remove this illegal administration and its daily blatant assault on our Constitution and the rule of law from power. And so I'm going to shift today a little bit to the role of the military, and particularly leaders in the military. I'm going to be joined by a 26-year veteran of the Navy. He was a commander in the Navy. His name is Phil Ehr. He's currently running for Congress in Florida. And he's also the founder of a PAC called the Ehr PAC, the Ehr Force PAC, that has been instrumental in letting Democrats make extreme, unexpected gains in deep red districts in Florida. He is very clear about the stakes that we face, his understanding of the role of the military and what that oath and commitment means and how that plays a role right now. So I'm really excited to talk to him coming up soon. Of course, there's so much focus on the military in the next few weeks. There is going to be a massive protest at the National Mall, which is where we held ours on D-Day on June 6th. Then the following week, there's going to be protests all over the country on June 14th, the same day that Donald Trump is going to destroy the streets of Washington, D.C. with military tanks and a parade that supposedly is to mark the 250th birthday of the Army, but coincidentally falls on the same day as his birthday. And he has been wanting a military parade like dictators do for years now, dating back to his first administration. So there are going to be protests all over the country on that day, on June 14th, including one that I will be speaking at and streaming live here on the Jessica Denson YouTube channel. Phil and I actually are also going to be part of a veterans town hall coming up just this Tuesday, which I will discuss more with Phil when we bring him in. But I wanted to go through, just before we bring in Commander Ehr, to talk about the options our military has and the obligations they have in this moment, just about some of the brazen illegality that we have witnessed and how this highlights why action absolutely must be taken now. You probably have heard just today that it's, my goodness, Elon Musk's last day as a special government employee. He had a press conference with Donald Trump today in the Oval Office. As we know, he is ending his stint actually as an official special government employee, but he's not out of government. His hands are very much still in the administration. Of course, he's leaving today because it's the end of the 130 days that he is allowed to be a special government employee. After that, he would be subjected to all kinds of scrutiny of his massive, massive conflicts of interest that he is currently engaged in and has been for all these months by being in the government. Of course, it's a complete farce that Elon Musk ever was in this venture, this Doge venture, to save our government money. He was here to protect his own interests. We've talked on the show about some of the more egregious violations of safety rules that his company are engaged in. We know Donald Trump has fired inspector generals across the board in all kinds of agencies whose job is to make sure that money going to private entities and businesses and contractors like Musk's, where he has billions of dollars in contracts from our government, are not being abused, and that those contractors are upholding certain standards. I mean, one of the more egregious ones that I pointed out is his abuse of animals, his sick torture of animals in his Neuralink company, and how that oversight was thwarted among many other oversight initiatives by his so-called venture to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. Now, he has claimed that it is saving the government $160 billion. Ridiculous. But real analysis shows that this actually will cost taxpayers. This venture, this illegal, unmandated, unauthorized by Congress venture of this non-government agency will cost taxpayers $135 billion. $135 billion. The Partnership for Public Service, which is a nonpartisan nonprofit that focuses on the federal workforce, said that his actions will cost $135 billion just this fiscal year, associated with putting tens of thousands of federal employees on paid leave, rehiring mistakenly fired workers, and lost productivity. This estimate is based on the $270 billion in annual compensation costs for the federal workforce, calculating the impact of Doge actions from paid leave to productivity hits. And it doesn't even include the expense of defending multiple lawsuits challenging Doge's actions, nor the impact of estimated lost tax due to the staff cuts at the IRS. So it's a massive, massive cost, just like this backwards barbarous bill, aka big beautiful bill they're trying to sell, that is supposed to be some kind of savior for the American economy, when it's really going to add trillions and trillions of dollars in debt, not to mention try to completely undermine the checks and balances in this country. We're going to touch on again today. But clearly a complete fraud. In the name of wiping out waste, fraud, and abuse, a complete fraud that, lest we forget, the whole Doge venture started with Elon Musk and his 20-year-old hackers, not auditors, not government analysts, but hackers, breaking in to the Treasury and other federal agencies, stealing our private, most sensitive information, and putting him in the hands of the world's richest man. Unbelievable theft, unbelievable violation, the sabotage of U.S. aid, which does so much work to protect and share and amplify American values of humanity and decency across the globe to those who are suffering the most and need it the most. Unthinkable assaults on our agencies across the board. So that's one aspect. We've covered extensively on this show the articles of impeachment that have so far been filed. In the first that were filed by Representative Tanadar, the whole establishment of Doge was one of those articles of impeachment. It is absolutely a legitimate basis for this man, Donald Trump, this illegal president, to be impeached and removed. And so if we should be focusing on anything today, it is the illegality of this entire Doge operation and why it is yet another reason for Donald Trump's administration to be removed from power now. Now, another thing that I want to highlight, which is just blatant corruption. This is another one that was underscored by Free Speech for People, who has had an impeachment campaign from day one of Trump's illegal administration. And that is his massive, massive violation of the Emoluments Clause of the United States Constitution that prohibits self-enrichment. And this term, this second illegal term of Donald Trump, he has blatantly violated any kind of checks on his efforts to self-enrich himself during his administration. And this is the foundation of either freedom or tyranny. Having a leader who is beholden to the people, who does not use that office of public trust and public service for self-enrichment. This is absolutely impeachable and impeach, remove, convict conduct. That is what should be happening now. I want to highlight an article from Will Bunch at the Philadelphia Inquirer, one of my favorite columnists. And he did an excellent piece that I'm kind of going to go through with you together here on the unbelievable scandal that is Cryptogate. He says it's 10 times bigger than Watergate. He says since Trump became president, again, illegally, I will say, on January 20th, his net worth has increased by $2.9 billion. $2.9 billion. That's just thanks to his recent plunge into cryptocurrency. And that doesn't even include the $400 million jumbo jet from Qatar. It doesn't include the $28 million that Jeff Bezos is paying to Melania Trump in Bunch's words for a documentary that no one is asking to see. It doesn't include the new deals that just keep coming, like a scheme for Trump media to get into crypto. It's unthinkable, the level of corruption that is going on. And Bunch writes that what's so shocking isn't even the level of corruption that we're witnessing, but the silence of the media and the silence of our general narrative in this country as to the level of corruption here and just how blatant, nakedly corrupt and illegal it is. Now, he encourages everybody to call this Cryptogate. Listen, we can call it Cryptogate. I'm all for that. I just want action on Cryptogate. I want this to be a impeachment article. I want it to be something that no Democrat or Republican can weasel their way out of defending. And I want everybody to be put on the record. It's why we've been so aggressive on this show in promoting articles of impeachment and having Representative Tanadar on the show, who committed to invoking Rule 9 and following up with you like we did this week on the progress of that. And by the way, I will tell you, there appears to be very forward-moving progress from Representative Tanadar in following through on his promise to invoke Rule 9. Although he did not initially do it when he said he would a few weeks back, it does appear that he is inclined to make good on that promise. And this show and the activism of citizens impeachment, May Day movement, and everybody involved in this has had no small part in that. So if you are part of this movement, if you are watching here on Lights On right now, subscribed, I got to tell you, we are making waves, and we are very much part of the action, the needed action that is happening right now in DC. So it's an incredible thing. It's actually huge. It's actually huge, the waves that this show and the movements that we have partnered with are making for what's needed right now to remove this fascist, blatantly corrupt and illegal administration from power. So that's where you are right now. I'm so grateful to have you with me. But just getting back for a minute to this Bunch article, I just want to go through a few more things in it. I wanted to share my screen with you so you could actually see some of this article. instead of sharing my screen, I left the studio. Don't worry, I'm here. I'm back. But what I will just read from you a little bit more. He talks about the dinner with Trump, where, of course, we heard of last week, this very, very corrupt crypto dinner that Donald Trump had with people who were buying his cryptocurrency. That doesn't even include other dinners that several organizations, news organizations, have reported that top business leaders are being solicited and in some cases agreeing to pay $5 million for one-on-one dinners at Mar-a-Lago with Trump. Just an clear pay-to-play scheme, completely illegal. There's this $400 million jet is going to be then donated to the Donald Trump library. This jet from Qatar is going to cost the American taxpayer about $1 billion to refurbish and to actually, if it's even actually possible, get to the point where it's not a massive national security risk, which I don't think is possible at all, but minimum of $1 billion to do that. Here's something else from Bunch. It says it's already been the presidential library of Donald Trump has already been promised $37 million in legal settlements from two giant companies, Facebook parent Meta, $22 million, and Disney, ABC News, $15 million. You remember that one? These news organizations and social media organizations capitulating, obeying in advance, paying money for favorable treatment from Donald Trump's illegal administration. The level of corruption is so nakedly brazen and corrupt. It is truly, truly out of bounds. And it's what, by the way, it's what allows this administration to assault our rights. It's what allows them to do some of the most egregious things, like this week, what the Supreme Court just allowed today. They allowed the administration to revoke the legal status of over 500,000 migrants living in the United States. This new order puts roughly 530,000 migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela at risk of being deported. Now, this touches me, this kind of hits close to home because I was literally on the Trump campaign when I was delusional and misguided by right-wing media 8-9 years ago on the Trump campaign as they went through the state of Florida with Donald Trump at intimate small town halls and rallies where he was courting the votes of Venezuelans and Cubans, people who had escaped egregious human rights violations in their countries of origin. And right now, his administration is going to deport over 500,000 migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela that are here to escape the dangerous persecution and even death, the risk of death that they face in their home countries. That's how supporting Donald Trump works out for you, anybody who fell for his scam. Another story that just makes me so sick, and I pointed out Myanmar a couple weeks ago because Myanmar nationals who were also here on refugee status are being deported to South Sudan, we learned. It's not just the slave prison in El Salvador, CCOT, it's also South Sudan, one of the countries that has a horrific history of human rights violations and civil unrest. And that is where they are choosing to send refugees from other places that are fraught with political unrest, like Myanmar. Well, there's another article that I came across this week that talks about 13 Myanmar nationals who are here as refugees being deported from the United States. They are now being held in a notorious interrogation center in Yangon, Myanmar. Okay, there are 20 individuals, 16 men, 4 women, that were handed over to Myanmar's military junta in April. Let me remind you why Myanmar's military junta is in power. Because right around the same time that Donald Trump claimed there was a stolen election from him in 2020, that there was election fraud and he didn't really lose to President Joe Biden, right around that same time, the military junta in Myanmar decided to take a page out of his playbook and also claim that there was fraud in their election. And their democratically elected leader was ousted, and their military junta took power and cracked down in unthinkable, violent ways on their citizens, on protesters. It's an ongoing human rights nightmare in Myanmar. So 20 individuals who came to this country to escape that persecution, to escape that unrest and danger to their lives, have been sent back to Myanmar and were immediately taken by the junta and are in this notorious detention center. This center is regarded as one of the worst in the country for its brutal treatment of detainees. It's notorious as the place where many protesters were tortured and killed in the wake of February 2021. That's when the military junta initiated their coup. So you've got cruelty, utter cruelty, brazen corruption, violation of the Constitution, and attempted sabotage of the rule of law by things like sneaking this inability of courts to enforce contempt orders into this barbarous backwards bill that the House passed and is now in the hands of the Senate. I did want to play for you a video from a town hall with Nebraska Representative Mike Flood. He is a Republican who voted for this bill, and he is being held accountable by his constituents. Now, this shows you the power of shining lights on things. It shows you, watch this entire exchange, because to anyone who tells you that impeachment's impossible because we don't have the numbers, or we'll never get Donald Trump out now, he's too invincible, we have to wait for the right moment. Just look at what this one woman did in a town hall to get this Republican representative to admit what he admits. If we shine that kind of light, hold their feet to the fire in this way consistently, there is no defending this corruption. There is no defending this illegality. Watch this interaction.
Share your concern for our national debt, but the ends do not justify the means. Can you please tell us why you voted to approve a budget bill that includes Section 70302, which effectively prohibits federal courts from enforcing contempt orders? Which would then allow current and future administrations to ignore those contempt orders by removing the enforcement capabilities.
I do not agree with that section that was added to that bill. I will tell you this. I believe in the rule of law. I've taken an oath as an attorney. I've taken an oath as a state senator. I've taken an oath as a member of Congress, and I support our court system, and I do believe that the federal district courts, when issuing an injunction, should have legal effect. In fact, I relied upon that when the Biden administration was in place. The federal courts did a tremendous amount of good work. This provision was unknown to me when I voted for the bill.
Okay, next question. Next question.
I am not going to hide the truth. This provision was unknown to me when I voted for that bill. And when I found out that provision was in the bill, I immediately reached out to my Senate counterparts and told them of my concern. And when I return to Washington, I am going to very clearly tell the people in my conference that we cannot support undermining our court system, and we must allow our federal courts to operate and issue injunctions.
Oh, wow. Okay, let us definitely hold him to that promise, because guess what? The Trump administration is already violating court orders. They are already completely undermining the rule of law. I feel like sometimes we lose sight of the fact that we're actually dealing with a convicted felon. You believe in the rule of law, Mike Flood. Your president on your party who you support is a convicted felon. He is a sexual abuser. There is reason to believe that this man with Jeffrey Epstein violated underage women, and that information possibly is what, maybe it's what Vladimir Putin has on him, and why Donald Trump has been such a sucker to Vladimir Putin all these years. Don't believe his recent outbursts at Putin. It's all theater. He is completely owned by the Russians and has been a Russian asset for years. So you believe in the rule of law. You love this country, Mike Flood, or any other Republican, by the way. Let's hold your feet to the fire on that. One of the articles of impeachment filed, the one filed by Representative Al Green, was almost explicitly about the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia and the Trump administration's violation of the court order, sending this man without due process and without a recourse for return, and in violation of court orders, to CICAT, this El Salvador concentration camp. That is what a concentration camp is. It's where people go without due process. Okay? That's already where we are. The Trump administration is literally attacking institutions like Harvard, which is really just the tip of the iceberg, in the name of promoting anti-Semitism, which is a complete farce, a complete attack on the First Amendment rights of people who are actually protesting genocide. And they're doing this all in the name of anti-Semitism, when in fact they are acting like Nazis. They are acting like outright fascists and the Nazis of 2025. That provision in the BBB that will go through if there is not sufficient pushback from both Republicans and Democrats, who I will remind you in the Senate could be stalling this entire effort by objecting to unanimous consent. We talked about that the other day on Lights On, how individual senators have enormous power to gum up the works, like Tommy Tuberville did in Biden's administration, to gum up the works by objecting to unanimous consent. So there are incredible tools that we have, both from our supposed allies in the pro-democracy space and in doing what that woman just did there in that town hall, and holding these people's feet to the fire when they say they are for the rule of law and for our Constitution, and exposing their utter hypocrisy when they are not. I mentioned Harvard because there are a few clips that I want to show you. We're going to do this. We're just waiting for Commander Ehr to come into the studio right now. If he doesn't come in a couple of minutes, I'm going to play this clip for you first. But Harvard has been under immense attack, as I was mentioning, for combating anti-Semitism, or for, enabling anti-Semitism, which is just complete nonsense. And in the name of that, this administration on May 22nd, DHS tried to strip Harvard of its student and exchange visitor program certification, instantly jeopardizing the visas of nearly 6,800 international students. That's 27% of their student body. Kristi Noem, puppy killer, unqualified Department of Homeland Security secretary who just goes on PR stunts every day, announced that this move also doubled as a request for documents instructing Harvard to deliver 5 years of video or audio or any protest activity involving a non-immigrant student, plus disciplinary files, before the ban will be reconsidered. Now, this week, in light of the litigation that Harvard brought, of course, immediately to combat this illegal attempt to strip them of their ability to enroll foreign students, the administration reneged, and they said, we're going to give you a 30-day window to challenge this. And also, the court ruled in favor of Harvard and put in a temporary injunction blocking them from blocking international students. But in light of this, there have been some incredible protests happening at Harvard. I'm going to show you at the end of the show, and I see Phil on deck there now, so we're going to bring him in just a minute. I'm going to show you some clips from the Harvard commencement, things that you need to hear, and from another commencement from legendary activist Jane Fonda, some words of encouragement and motivation to action that I think we all need. One group, one constituency that doesn't falter, doesn't hesitate when action is needed are our armed forces. And it's been so heartening to see so many of them, veterans, active duty, come out and speak when they can, the veteran space, about the illegality and blatant constitutional violations of this administration. I know Commander Ehr is on board for having this administration removed as soon as possible. And I'm so happy to be able to talk to him today about what we can do in that direction. Phil, looks like you're in a beautiful place. I'm jealous. Welcome, Commander Ehr, to Lights On. I think you're muted. Let's get you unmuted. 1 second. Phil, you know, we don't have your audio.
More. Hold on.
There we go.
We in?
There we go.
All right. Jessica, you say you're jealous. Well, look at this audience you have assembled because of your dedication, your passion, and you're spot on with what we need in our country. So right now, yeah, I am coming to you from one, you know, we have this sea to shining sea. This is the Gulf of Mexico, and I'll keep the sun behind me so that the light is maybe a little bit better. By the end of our conversation, we might get a little glimpse of sunset. And this is where you expect the lights to come on for lots of other people around this beach, right? To follow,
nice.
You know, to follow your path, because this is a place where a lot of MAGA people hang out, the state of Florida. But it's also the place where a lot of people are coming out and back into the light of what's true and what's right for our country. How to, you know, can you imagine these folks, these families, these people playing in the surf? It's green flag, it's all safe. Yeah. Without the ugliness of cheating, lying, and stealing. Now, okay, that's 3 words that come off, but they mean something to people in uniform who know the honor code. I will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those among us who do. And it's right in line with you know, with what your discussion of the oath and everything else that you talked about in the first half of the show. And I'll tell you, every single topic that you brought up has been front and center for a period of time, and you know, is all threatening us in so very many ways. So it's just great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's really great to have you on. And now I know I mentioned at the top, your PAC, the Ehr Force PAC, was instrumental in really making strides in districts where they did not think it was possible. And I want to talk to you about that in a few minutes, also about your congressional run. And I have some definite questions for you about the positions you're taking. Okay. Can we just go back to your time in the military? You served in the Navy. You advanced from Navy seaman to commander, 26-year active duty career. You flew reconnaissance in the Cold War, combat support in Desert Storm. I mean, from your perspective, as someone who has put so much on the line for this country, who has taken that oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and of course to follow legal orders of the President of the United States. Just how do you fathom this moment that we're in?
Okay, I look at it from also the perspective of the oath, yes, also the perspective of my friends who died for our country, and not just my friends, although they were personal, college roommate and people I trained with, you know, in the air and at sea. I've just been to a military cemetery, and they're all around the nation. And last weekend or so, a lot of them were decorated with flags and flowers for Memorial Day. That day is just, you know, is a highlight. If you think about to past wars, the war that is the conflict and the peace that is relevant to this conversation right here, right now with this administration is World War II. We entered World War II for a reason, the right reason, to push back the aggression in Europe, to stop fascism, and it was the right choice, but it was a choice for us to get involved. And the American people got on board after some time, went over to Europe, stayed in the Pacific, and we fought and died, and not just the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, but it was also the people back home who sacrificed. So when we look out at the cemeteries, That's the perspective that we need to look at. We are fighting for the underpinning of our prosperity and our way of life, the underpinning of what makes this beach so beautiful and the beaches in Russia and China not so much.
Yeah, no kidding, no kidding. Russian asset, Krasnov Bone Spurs, as I called him at our rally in March. What would you like to see? Having been a commander in the Navy, what would you like to see from our highest brass in the military right now? Or retired military who I know have more opportunity to speak publicly. What would you like to see from them?
I'd like to see more of them showing up. There are some people who are showing up. They're showing up with their honor and their courage. Look at a former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff who's now a target of Trump's retribution. When he said he just reiterated the normal position of the oath. We fight and are loyal to our Constitution, not any kings. So I want to see more of that from our senior officers. We in the Navy and the other services pride ourselves on one thing above all, and that's leadership. Leadership means showing up. Leadership means discerning what is right, having the courage and the honor, the commitment to get out and put yourself on the line. I run into so many senior people, senior enlisted, senior retired officers, who are taking a back step. They think, well, it's not dignified, or the civilian control of the armed forces really is the main thing we need to look out for. Don't get involved in politics. Don't get your hands dirty. But where do you think Nathan Hale would have been? Where do you think General George Washington would have been? And we need to find more courage within the retired officer corps. I have the privilege of working for many senior four-star officers, admirals, and generals, helping them interact with the public, with the legislative branch of government for budgets and strategy and bases and roles and missions and joint strategic capabilities plans, etc. They know what is needed for the security of the United States, and they know the difference between lawful conduct and policy differences between the two parties, right, and the setting aside of the Constitution. So since we're on the beach, what a more fine place to have a little, I don't know, you indulge me a minute for a Latin history, a Latin, lesson, tiny little Latin lesson. Habeas corpus. Yes. we had a Homeland Security secretary fail the test on habeas corpus completely. And we need to see if the president goes further, he's already broken the law many times, and he has a clear path to just continuing to do that. But when he continues to go down the road of suspending habeas corpus, like one of his the deputy chief of staff of the White House is mused that he'll just set it aside based on some national security farce, and they will do that. So habeas corpus, generals and admirals, come on out and call it out when you see it's clearly violating the Constitution. Now the Supreme Court gets to rule on it, and when they rule and the president blatantly disregards it, we're in deep trouble. So leadership needs to come from the senior folks now. We expect that. Their troops expect that, and their families expect it. The second term. Let me just
for one second. I mean, now you're saying that can come from active duty leadership.
No, I want it to come from retired.
Okay.
Retired. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. The retired folks need to speak out. The active duty folks need to act appropriately. So they're not acting out, acting within the rule of law, acting within the Constitution, acting in concert with their oath. And it's the retired folks who need to encourage them by standing up for what's for the Constitution in our retired lives. And I'm one of them. I know I'm not the only one, but there needs to be more. And I'm not saying everybody needs to go to a rally. You know, senior officers in the 4, 3-star, 1-star, even senior, you know, senior retired enlisted. A lot of them are a little old, and we get, you know, we can get a little boisterous there in the mall on June 6th and other places around the country. But you can do something. You can do something, and you know what to do. It is taking the action that is required to let people around you know. And to the extent you used to have a megaphone as a active duty general officer, you can have that same sort of a megaphone, that same tone, that same attitude, that same passion for our country in civilian life with the civilian audience. That's what we Americans expect from your training, sir, ma'am, in the United States. So you know, you went to war college, and it was a free and open process of development. Take that development into your civilian life.
Now, what an important distinction you made between the opportunity that retired military has and active duty. The retired military, they can use their voice, they can use their words, they can use their platform and bully pulpit. The active duty, I love this. They can use their actions.
Their actions. And it is not an option for active duty to fail to use their actions. But they need to have the perspective of the Supreme Court, and they need to have the perspective and the mentoring of the retired flag and general officers. So that's my main message to the active force. Follow the Constitution, follow your chain of command, and follow your oath. Your chain of command has other senior officers in it that will do a lot of the helping you interpret your actions, but it's the retired corps of officers and senior enlisted who can put on their thinking caps, turn on the lights, Jessica, and talk. Make sure that their peers and their friends, their colleagues who are still on active duty know what's constitutional and what's not, and how to navigate these, yes, uncharted waters.
All right, let's talk about for a minute what's unconstitutional and what's not, because I got to the activism space by founding a grassroots organization called 14th Now.
Yep.
You can, anybody watching who's not familiar, go to nowmarch.org. Nowmarch.org is our website. We were the ones who organized the March 14th, and we were there before the certification on January 3rd through 5th in Washington, D.C. in the bitter cold. This entire administration is illegal. It is a violation, a black letter violation of the Constitution of the United States. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, a result of the Civil War. This came to us after the Civil War, after the Union defeated the Confederacy, after we ended slavery and made humanity enshrined, dignity, basic humanity enshrined into our Constitution through the 14th Amendment. That amendment, Section 3, prohibits insurrectionists from holding office unless they are cleared by 2/3 of Congress. Currently, in spite of the ruling of Trump v. Anderson, you mentioned the guidance of the Supreme Court. There's a lot of misunderstanding about that disqualification case. It had no bearing on Trump's actual status as an insurrection. It only had bearing on his ballot access. They never cleared him as an insurrectionist. He was adjudicated to have incited and led a deadly insurrection against our institutions of power to keep himself in power illegally, adjudicated by multiple venues, and is currently, right now, inhabiting that office illegally. When you say turn the lights on, I'm thinking, turn them on bright, think outside the box. I feel if I was in the military, that I could not do anything. I mean, nothing in furtherance of this administration, from showing up at a military parade to escorting him at a Memorial Day service, anything in support of this man and his administration, knowing that his entire presidency violates the Constitution.
Well, there is yes. Well, I agree with your sentiment. And the actions of the Supreme Court did not disqualify him from taking the oath, and it was administered properly, although not rightly and not in accordance, according to us, Jessica?
No, they didn't disqualify. They didn't not disqualify him. He's already disqualified.
Okay, fair. That was Colorado's basic case, I think, right?
Yeah, so Colorado adjudicated him, as did Maine and Illinois, to be an insurrectionist, as we all saw in plain sight, as did the January 6th committee through multiple hearings of members of Congress that you may become one of, that we all sat through and cried and were furious at having lived through this attack on our country.
Well,
this is a status. The Supreme Court did not remove it. They didn't touch it. They didn't touch it.
Yeah. And I'm not calling for a mutiny, but I am calling for a revolt of the admirals and generals. And, you know, the folks who've gone through War College know about the revolt of the admirals. Study that again. Study that in context of today's, and think about
revolt
your actions
of the
on
admirals.
Revolt of the admirals.
Okay.
You can Google it, but it's revolt of the admirals had to do with admirals saying, we don't agree with what the president has said here and what he's ordered. We're just gonna, not do it. And that didn't go very well for the admirals. The civilians do control the military. So my point for the active duty folks and the retired corps that is mentoring them through their actions on television, on the journals, and however, is to look at the next point in my Latin lesson, which is posse comitatus. We've got threats of having the active duty force use their military might on the streets of the United States in violation of the posse comitatus act that prohibits that. And you have the idea that is popped up from time to time at rallies and whatnot to get the military into the streets to calm a fake situation that they will put out of control. So when you see posse comitatus and other provisions of law being violated, the active duty needs to take a good look at the chain of command and a good look at their JAGs. Consult with the people, because we are in the Army and the Navy and Air Force and Marine Corps. We are the people's service, executing lawful orders from our government, and that includes standing of the Supreme Court, Article 3 of the Constitution, under the authority of not under the authority of Constitution of the laws that the Congress passes. But the most important, Jessica, and I think Latin phrase is semper fidelis. We will always be faithful. We will always be faithful to our Constitution and our country and the people. This covenant among the people, the government, and the military is another bedrock that everybody who's gone to War College will know. The people are the source of our power. The government executes on behalf of the people, and there's a covenant between the people and the military that the government provides. And that military institution it's not just an arm of the executive. It is coming from the people, for the people, and by the people to further our mission. And our mission is to fight and win our nation's wars, not the culture wars, not the wars on poor people that have been, or not poor people, but vulnerable people who have been manipulated by the information war that's inflicted upon them by enemies, both foreign and domestic.
100%. 100%. I want to ask you two questions
about
your PAC and your congressional run. So let's start off with your PAC. We had special elections a few months back. Was it late March, early April? I'm not remembering the exact date, but special elections in Florida. Those two congressional races that were expected to just go straight to Republicans without any kind of opposition. Now, they did win, but not with anywhere near the margin that people expected them to. And from my understanding, your PAC, the Ehr Force PAC, was instrumental in moving that needle. Can you tell me about that?
Well, we have a lot of other people who tell you that we were instrumental in it, but I'll give you the Ehr Force PAC's view of it. There were two congressional special elections in the state of Florida that were called shortly after, in December or November, for completion on the 1st of April. So there was the 1st congressional district of the Northwest Florida, Gates's old seat, and the 6th congressional district, Mike Walz's old seat. They went on to the administration, then Gates, crashed and burned as he normally does. Because I had previously run for Congress up in the 1st congressional district, we ended up helping this PAC, the Ehr Force PAC, helping not the candidate who was running, although she was fabulous, Gabe Elamont. We didn't help her at all. We helped who? We helped the Democratic Party in Escambia, Santa Rosa, and Okaloosa counties who trusted me from our previous relationships. And I brought up people from South Florida, Dr. Vanessa Brito specifically, into Northwest Florida because she had the quantitative training, rigorous training, PhD level, and the qualitative experience of strategy and political operations over 15 years. And what we ended up doing was teaching and mentoring Escambia County, Florida leadership, and those other 2 counties as well, on how to use data, how to get more data. And data is a proxy for connections. We were on the ground in December when the rest of the Democratic apparatus at the national and state levels hadn't even organized yet to address the special election there. And as a result, Escambia County changed from red to blue in that one election. Santa Rosa and Okaloosa counties both moved 20 points from the space of November to April, several months later. And the other half county that did not come along and work with the PAC, that was also in that congressional district, did not move a point. And it just shows that, when you work as a team, when you have smart use of the valuable volunteers. Jessica, we had people from Colorado and other places join in the special election in the 1st district, and they came and they worked with the DECs. We helped the DECs and them knock on the right doors for the good effect of this election. And those kind of that firing for effect, military term used in the campaign context, is effective. It works. So we are doing that now in selected other races across the country. And one of them, currently right now, we've chosen to help a Navy veteran in Florida's House District 3, or is it R+50 or something district. We're not giving up, whereas the other parts of the National Party and not a lot of enthusiasm on the state level, we are enthusiastic. We are there, and we are helping that young man who's a Navy veteran and the underlying counties for the long-term effect. So that we did very well, and that's the Ehr Force PAC. Air Force, well, I flew in the United States Navy. My last name is Ehr, so it's kind of a fun thing in our campaign. Campaign was called Ehr Force, and we just used that term to form a PAC.
Yes.
Ehr Force PAC, EHR.
You had me tricked for a minute. I kept wanting to call you an Air Force, but I had to correct myself, Navy. But listen, you're running for Congress right now. You're running currently for
I'm a candidate.
28th Congressional District, another uphill battle, but I commend you for not writing anything off. I think that is a completely, losing strategy to just assume defeat, and none of these, anyone in my mind who's on the right side of politics right now and has any love for our country is just being completely brainwashed, and we can't write these people off. We can't write them off. We have to try to win them back. But I have had a healthy dose of criticism for the current state of the Democratic Party, in particular, the members of Congress right now. Now, you heard me talk earlier about impeachment, which has been I am 14th Amendment, and impeachment has been like 99% of the content of Lights On, because I don't know what we're talking about if we're not talking about removing Donald Trump from power now. And this show and the movements that are associated with the impeachment effort were instrumental in getting this one Congressman Tanadar, to commit to forcing this vote. And the entire Democratic leadership apparatus whipped against this man, bullied him, tried to shame him to cover their own asses and not wanting to put themselves on the line for an impeachment vote right now because they think it's not convenient or it's not the right time. Would you believe that now is the right time? If you were a member of Congress right now, Commander Ehr,
yes, ma'am.
Would you vote for an article of impeachment? Or better yet, would you bring your own?
I would attend hearings. I would get the facts out, because what we're doing here, Jessica, we're doing the answer. Bottom line, the answer is yes, I'd vote for it. But let me just explain that the vote in itself is not sufficient to do what we need to do to remove the man. We need to get out into the public so the public accepts it as true, the bad things, the illegal things, the unconstitutional actions of this executive, and then move him out. So I will vote for an impeachment. Yes, I will vote for it. And it has to be done. It has to be done. Removing him is justified. Removing him is a political act more than a legal act, but we have the legal backing. We need the politics to work. We need both the impeachment in the House and the conviction in the Senate. So we do need people who believe, like you and I do, that the Constitution is what matters, not the personality or whatnot. Just not the personality of the forcefulness of the criminal in office. We need to make sure that we have the votes to convict. Now, Jessica, you came from Donald Trump's campaigning world, right? And
Yes.
that is a world of hard knocks and really just taking it to him. And that kind of attitude is what you're displaying now, and it is so great. We need you and other folks that are in the rough and tumble of politics and not being tipping toeing around stuff, to just come on out and say what needs to be done. And so what you're saying by he needs to be impeached, yes, he needs to be impeached. And
yeah, I mean, listen, whether
American
we have the votes now or not, and thank you for, I guess, bringing that out. I mean, one of the things in my delusion that allowed me to follow the Trump train 8-9 years ago was thinking, here's a fighter, right? Here's a fighter, when so many people are just have their platitudes but don't actually do anything. That was the hook that got me. Granted, he fights for nothing but himself, and he's a complete fraud. But take a friggin' page out of their playbook. We see them hijack the narrative on a daily basis with one obscene, egregious scheme after another. We can't even keep track. Like, the Democrats could be hijacking the conversation. They could be doing that, making that case on all of the corruption and illegality by forcing these votes on a regular basis, because then the media would be forced to cover it. You remember what happened with Tommy Tuberville? Yeah. I mean, he held up the entire promotion of flag officers over providing reproductive services to members of our military. Like, the Democrats right now, being in the minority is not without power. They have incredible tools of disruption to be using right now, and then using those tools of disruption to take the narrative, take the oxygen, take the media space, and make the case that will get the votes, that will force people like, the representative from Nebraska that I showed earlier in the show to admit that he's wrong.
And we're going to have a great ally in doing just that. Yes, by the election in 2026, when the House, will change to the Democratic leadership, but before that, we're going to have the greatest ally in the reality of chaos in the economy. So when we can start talking about these folks here not being able to come to the beach in any of these good numbers, except for just a very few, because they're going to be so worried about feeding their families. The ability to pay insurance and to get by without one little hiccup, and a lot of folks that are on this beach and others, I'm sure, they're one paycheck away from actually not being able to feed their kids, or being able to do something that is normal in their lives. It's be big disruption. That reality is going to set in, and it's going to help us do the political work necessary to win. The political work like our PAC is doing up in different parts of Florida, and the political work that all of us across the nation are going to do in the 2026 midterm elections.
Yeah, what I would say to our friends in the Democratic Party, and you're in a unique space because you're not currently in a seat, you're looking to get one for the first time, but to those who are currently in a seat, It is not sufficient, my friends, to just run for re-election on what you can do when you get back power. You must be using every tool at your disposal now, and we will judge you and we will primary you accordingly as to the action that you take now. So that's my fair warning to our friends in the Democratic Party, which is the only party that I could conceivably support right now as an independent. I'm still 100% Democrat supporting independent, but these we have to pressure, especially our friends, those who posture themselves on the right side to actually, as you said, for our active duty friends in the military, follow through with actions. I want to give a shout out to someone you mentioned a few minutes ago, Vanessa Brito, incredible organizer out of Florida. She brought you and I together and also brought me to this town hall that's coming up on June 3rd. You, of course, are going to be in it too. It's going to be such an incredible event. Others, including Alexander Vidman and other
and his wife Rachel,
and his wife Rachel, and both of whom have been on Lights On, by the way. We will all be part of this town hall on Tuesday, June 3rd, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It's called Their Service, Our Promise, a Veterans and Military Families virtual town hall hosted by the Florida Democratic Party and the Democratic Veterans Caucus of Florida. So if you can, please, please, please join us on Thursday. I put the link down in the description. Click there. It's a mobilized link. Just click there, RSVP. Join us in that town hall on Tuesday. I'm really looking forward to it. Phil, thank you so much. You really did bring the lights on from the beach there in Florida. So I appreciate it so much.
Sun is going down on the Gulf of Mexico, and we have so much, Jessica, to work for our country. Yeah. And we need to keep fighting. And you're right. These are not normal times. Normal rules of the road, rules of Congress, rules of decorum sometimes do not apply. And it's up to leaders, especially in the retired senior officer level, to demonstrate the leadership that they demonstrated on active duty. Get out there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
100%, 100%. So thank you, Phil. We'll have you back again soon, I'm sure. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today on Lights On. As always, you can support this show by going to thejessicadenson.com. Also, thejessicadenson.com/donate is a way to support me and my advocacy directly, which I need. I'm still, to this day, involved in litigation against the Trump campaign, and I do need your help there. So thank you so much to everybody who supports me there. Thejessicadenson.com has our merch and other resources for this show and the 14th Now movement. I promised you that clip from the Harvard commencement. It's a little montage I put together, so I'm going to send you off today with these words. By the way, you're going to hear from Harvard President Alan Garber. You're going to hear from physician and novelist Abraham Varghese. He's an Ethiopian immigrant, very timely to have his voice in this moment. And also you're going to hear from Jane Fonda, the legendary activist who has been so instrumental in social change for decades and decades in this country. Listen for words, listen for uncomfortable, listen for hope, listen for action. All right, my friends, have a wonderful weekend. And as always, let your light shine.
There are two unprecedented and deeply interconnected challenges before us: democracy and climate. And for both, it is now or never.
A cascade of draconian government measures has already led to so much uncertainty, so much pain and suffering in this country and across the globe. And more has been threatened. The outrage you must feel, the outrage so many feel, also must surely lead us to a new appreciation. Appreciation for the rule of law and due process.
We're going to win or lose these two things together.
I know we will find our way back to displaying those attributes of America I admired from afar, the America I have known and loved from over 4 decades of being here. And it depends on all of you.
My hope for you, members of the class of 2025, is that you stay comfortable being uncomfortable.
Let's all remember that throughout history, the history of this country, starting with the Boston Tea Party, all of the rights that we enjoy today were fought for with protests. The 8-hour workday, child labor laws, women's right to vote, clean air and clean water, all of this was all fought for by people in the streets forcing officials to give them what they desperately needed. Across the country, people are pushing back, holding the line against the dismantling of democracy.
Character is determined by decisions taken under pressure. Character is determined by decisions taken under pressure. You can build a fictional character by describing their appearance, their manner of speaking, their dress, etc. But the moment the character really leaps off the page is when you put them under pressure and they're forced to make a decision. Make your decisions worthy of those who supported, nurtured, and sacrificed for you.
It's stunning, really, what people are doing. There is definitely reason for hope, but hope takes action. Hope is a muscle, like the heart. It's when we take action that hope comes alive. Václav Havel, the playwright that became the president of Czechoslovakia, once said, "Hope is not the conviction that everything is going to turn out well, but the certainty that something is worth doing no matter how well it turns out." So act. Be brave.